Oh god, what the fuck is this? Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I am here with a brand new movie review. No, not movie review. I mean here with a brand new epic movie rant. And this epic movie rant is going to be for easily a sequel I talked about on one of my sequels lists. And no, not the best list, the worst list. It was around the number 4 spot. And it's a sequel to a movie I reviewed last June, if you all remember. Around last June, I reviewed the first film, and this June, a year later, I'm reviewing the sequel it got. And that is none other than one of the biggest flops of 2006, Basic Instinct 2, or as I call it, basically, It Stinks 2. Technically, the Razzies came up with that name, but basically, It Stinks 2 is a better title for this movie, because basically, this movie stinks. Yeah, this movie even has a notoriously bad production I'm going to get to in a little bit. But what's the plot of this? Well, crime novelist Catherine Trammell is living in London and becomes a center of police investigation yet again, with their football player boyfriend drowns in a car accident and is revealed that he was already dead of a drug overdose before Trammell drove the car into water. Police psychologist Dr. Michael Glass is called for examining Trammell and is intrigued by a seductive and manipulative woman. On the other hand, his friend Det, Roy Washburn, is sure Trammell is guilty. Trammell asks Glass to treat her for her risk addiction problem, and with each therapy session, Glass gets more and more suspicious about her intentions. As more and more murders are committed, including that of Glass's ex-wife, Glass becomes obsessed with proving Trammell's guilt, although the evidence is contradictory. So, how is this movie made? Well, after the success of the first Basic Instinct, a sequel obviously was already planned because, hey, the first one made money. Time for a sequel, even though it wasn't needed. And it went through several years of hell. There were several directors that were going to be in charge of this I'm going to get to in a little bit. But first, well, after so many other years, eventually MGM had planned to produce a sequel for release in 2002, 10 years after the first film, late, but announced in 2001 that they would no longer be making the film. Wow. On the same day of the announcement, Sharon Stone filed a lawsuit against the movie's producers, Andrew G. Vanda and Mario Casar, claiming she would be guaranteed at least $14 million for her commitment for the sequel, even if the movie never got made. And as much as 50% of gross receipts in the film were released. And several directors were attached to this. Originally, we were going to have the director of Die Hard and Predator, John McTiernan, to direct this movie. Wow, you got the director of Die Hard making your sequel. Maybe you might have a good sequel after all. And he wanted Benjamin Bratt to play the main lead. But Sharon Stone did not approve. Apparently, she thought he was a bad actor. And then he wanted to rewrite the character as a Latin American psychiatrist working in an emergency room, who would be seduced not by just a woman but by wealth and luxurious he'd never been exposed to. So after that was cast, they originally were even going to have Robert Downey Jr. play the role of Dr. Glass, but he declined, and eventually he also would have to. This was around the time he got arrested for drug use before he came out and got sober. Aaron Eckhart was even a consideration, and even he backed out. They were even thinking of bringing Michael Douglas back, but even he knew that he did not want to play this role again because even he knew he was too old for this sequel. There was no way he wanted this. And some other directors were even considered, including David Cronenberg. Wow. You got the director of The Fly remake doing this sequel. You could keep him? No. Let's can his ass. We're even gonna have the director of one of the worst James Bond movies die another day, and the worst Triple X movie at Triple X State of the Union direct this movie, Lee Tamahori. He's canned? No. And then in 2004, the producers settled the lawsuit with Stone by agreeing to make the movie anyway, but it was way too late. So eventually they got Michael Caton Jones to finally direct the film, and they finally kept a director. Only because he was broke and had to take anything that came in to get money. And Basic Instinct 2 is his only poison chalice that had been passed around. Eventually it arrived at his door. And they finally got a male lead, David Morrissey, who would later play the governor in The Walking Dead. He would be playing the role of Dr. Glass. And originally Sharon Stone wasn't really going to be coming back for the role, but she decided to come back anyway for the role of Catherine Trammell. David Morrissey loved the script and immediately hit it off with Sharon Stone and made the way through the filming. And like the first film, this movie was also threatened with an NC-17 rated by the MPAA and went through cuts to achieve an R rating. So, after the sequel went through all the hell, you could finally release the movie after filming in London from April to August 2005. You finally released the movie. It would finally go to theaters on March 31st, 2006. However, it's great news, right? No. Because unlike the first one, which was mixed received by critics but has gotten better received over time and made lots of money at the box office, this movie got really, really bad reviews. Thank God. And this movie at the box office. Only $38 million worldwide, beautiful, and only $5 fucking million in North America. So well deserved. On a somehow $70 million budget. This movie does not look like $70 million. And then at the Razzies Award, which was dubbed Basically It Stinks 2, won 4 Razzie Awards for Worst Picture, Worst Actress for Sharon Stone, and Worst Prequel or Sequel and Worst Screenplay for Lyra Barish and Henry Bean. It also earned nominations for Worst Director, Worst Supporting Actor for David Thewlis. Somehow they got him to star in this movie. Why? And Worst Screen Couple. Like, come on, David Thewlis. The guy who plays Lupin in Harry Potter, why would you agree to be in this? Please, dude. Seriously? Have some sanity. The film also even received 3 nominations at the no longer included Stinker's Bad Movie Awards for Worst Picture, Worst Actress, and Worst Sequel. And Michael Caton Jones even hated making the movie, calling it a painful experience, a reaction he couldn't even care about. It was an experience of making it, it was horrible, and he knew it wasn't even going to be a good film the minute it started, which is a very, very painful thing. And he remembers coldly thinking that this would be the worst filmmaking experience of his life. And he tried to give it a good look, and he was happy with it, but he had a difficult time with Sharon Stone, but he had a great time with all the other actors. And now when it comes to me, guys, y'all know I love the first Basic Instinct. I think that movie and RoboCop are my favorite Paul Verhoeven movies. And this is even tied with Fatal Attraction as one of the few rare rock thrillers I actually enjoy watching, because you guys know I'm not a fan of the rock thriller genre, except for Basic Instinct and Fatal Attraction. Those are the only 2 I really like. And ironically, they both star Michael Douglas. But this movie, oh hell no! What the fuck was this even? This was just a cringe-ass embarrassment from start to finish. Like, with the production troubles, those were clearly a warning that this movie should not have even been made or just cancelled altogether, but the executives were all such stupid dumbasses and insisted on making the movie anyway because they thought they could still cash in on the success of the first, years later. The sequel's the exact opposite. Like, it cannot possibly get worse. Bad acting in a lame script, combined with totally inept direction. It's just like really bad, boring, and annoying. The only thing that somehow keeps you concentrated is the relatively short wait for the next scene. That is an exact reenacted copy of the original. These copies are so bad they make you laugh, and I laughed a lot in spite of myself because I was literally just watching the demolishing of a Steiny monument. The only thing I guess is good in this horrible mess are the excerpts of the Jerry Goldsmith score from the first film. Michael Caton Jones and the halfwit responsible for the script even included that there's no smoking in this room dialogue, the interrogation scene, and yeah, she sends her attorney, who is now a solicitor, away. Like, when I first saw this movie, like, when I rewatched this movie yesterday, like, I was just, like, throughout, not even, like, around, like, the first 30 minutes, I was almost bored asleep 3 times throughout the entire movie. And I had to keep nearly waking up just to stay awake for this piece of shit. Like, I have, like, holy hell, like, this movie's 114 minutes and it feels like 2.5 hours long. That's how long it feels. Like, the pacing is so bad. It's, like, just slow. Like, they try too hard with this movie, trying to make something out of nothing. You want to see a plot with twists and turns, just watch a better movie like Seven or Usual Suspects. They were huge hits, and no one took their clothes off. The dialogue is full of cliches. It reminds of all those B movies, except you wouldn't pay to watch a B movie. The sex in this movie was needless and pointless. Like, in Basic Instinct 1, there was sex in that movie, but it was part of the story. It was original and thrilling, and there was still chemistry in them. Like, you can, like, plus, it's a Paul Verhoeven movie. The director of such explicit movies like RoboCop and Total Recall and Showgirls, like, of course, if it's from Paul Verhoeven, of course the movie's going to be explicit. What do you expect? And plus, at least it had a reason to be in there. This time around, it was just Grandma Stone forcing herself onto the Pillsbury Doughboy. Just forced awful and just prepped to whatever they could fit. I guess if they were trying to follow the old Hollywood concept, they got a strip to make a hit, but what they forgot was that this does not apply to grandmas. I mean, what is that woman thinking? She was nearing her 50s around the time they made this. Yes, the big 50s. Around the 2000s era, my words would be. Keep your clothes on, woman, for bloody hell. Regardless of how much cosmetic surgery you might have had back then, so it all that bad, you ask? Well, it's worse. Like, back, like, around the 90s, she was kind of the perfect age for stuff like this because she was around her 30s. This only works when you were in your 30s, not when you're near your 50s, okay? Like, the teens who secretly rented this movie without their parents knowing and snuck it in without them even knowing they watched it behind their backs, they've all grown up, they've graduated high school, they've got diplomas, they've got well-paid jobs around the time this movie had even come out. Those 90 kids, they're not around this age anymore. No. Like, now some of them probably even had families or got married. They no longer care for reenacted copies of an original movie that they've kind of grown out of, or just view as just a normal movie now. It's like, Michael Douglas even did the right thing not coming back for this film. Like, Paul Verhoeven didn't even come back because he retired from making American films after Hollow Man. And speaking of Paul Verhoeven, guys, he even saw the sequel and he hated it. And I don't blame him for hating this movie, because it lacked a great female lead. And Dr. Glass, I'm going to get to in a bit, but because speaking of that, our new character that replaces Michael Douglas is David Morrissey, who you all know as the Governor. And he gives a horrible performance in this film. It was just bland, dull, and he put no emotion in the role. This performance hurts the movie because he's the main character, he gets the most screen time, and he takes the film down with him. It's too bad they didn't find someone else. Like, you should have kept Benjamin Bratt. Like, Benjamin Bratt probably would have been a much better choice. Apparently, but Sharon said, like, no, I don't want Benjamin Bratt, he's a terrible actor. How? How was this performance better? No disrespect, guys, but how was this better than Benjamin Bratt? Like, you should have just kept Benjamin Bratt when you had the chance. But to be fair, I guess he didn't miss much. I think he might have lucked out not getting to be in this. Charlotte Rampling was pretty bland herself, and the character had potential to be a lot more interesting. David Thewlis, who I like better as Tonks in the Harry Potter films, was just okay, nothing special. Like, I don't know how the hell they got him to star in this movie. Like, come on, dude, have some bloody sanity, for Pete's sakes. You're becoming successful with Harry Potter, and this is one of the movies you choose to do. Like, he must have been paid a lot of money or something, but... And even, like, Sharon Stone gave a great performance in the first one. Her performance is just cringy and horrible. Like, and they even wasted her talents in this. Like, in the original, she was intimidating. She was, like, very realistic. All of her sexual dialogue was believable. She was a pretty great villainess in the first one. Here they just reused it. It no longer works here. And I know Michael Canton Jones hated this movie too, but he does a poor job behind the camera. He moved the film at a slow pace, he introduced pointless characters, and he did develop the central characters well, and most of them were bland, and none of them broke out of their dimensional personalities. He was clearly not the right man for the job since he had very little imagination. He just used a bunch of ideas and themes from the first movie, but I think he'd agree with me if he watches this video. If he ends up watching this video, he's probably going to agree with me because he didn't like making the sequel. He hates the sequel too. It was basically just a shitty direct-to-DVD rehash of the first film than anything else. The cinematography is pretty good, and it was a nice portrayal of London. The score is decent, though a little generic. And now for the dialogue. Oh my god, the dialogue is just atrocious here. Like, in the beginning of the movie, here's an example of how bad this dialogue is. David Thewlis's character asks Catherine Tremell, like, what were you doing at 100 miles per hour during, like, the first death scene? And Catherine Tremell responds, he was making me come, and it was 110, we must have hit a pothole. And then, David Thewlis's character again, Kevin Frakes died. Don't you seem very worried? And then Catherine Tremell's response, I'm devastated. I may never come again. Like, come on, like, oh my god. There's way more cum. There's probably so many cum references in this movie. Throughout the whole entire thing, like, maybe in the first one, but they didn't over-reference it in nearly every single line. Like, Sharon Stone's character never did any cum references that much in the first film. And when she ever did, at least she had a reason to reference it in the first film. All the sexual stuff in the first film was important to the story. There was a good reason for the sexual stuff in the first film. Here the sexuality is just forced. Like, just in short in general, this movie is slow, feels like 2.5 freaking hours long. I almost fell asleep 3 times studying through this bore fest, waiting for this movie to end. Like, holy god, like, how worse could this even get? The pacing even sucks, like I said. I could go on and on, but in the end, basically It Stinks 2 is just a basic, shitty remake of a 90s classic that deserves to be dumped in the garbage and burned in the incinerator like in Toy Story 3. So, you want a better version of this movie? Just go and watch that wonderful first film. It's basically this movie, except actually done better and actually better directed. Basic Instinct, you got great in the 90s, but trying to make it a franchise like Saw, nope. Like, maybe a sequel to this. You could have, like, maybe got away with doing a sequel, like, maybe around 1996 or 1997, or even 1998 would have worked. Just somewhere around the late 90s, a sequel would have worked better then, but not 14 years later. If you're going to plan a sequel, make it when you're able to make it. Don't wait 14 years to do something, but despite that, Basic Instinct is only better off as just one movie and it should have stayed a one and done concept. Anyway, that's it for my review of Basically Instinct 2. Basically It Stinks 2. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Basically It Stinks 2, here's how I'm going to rank it. So overall, please do anything better with your 2 hours of your life and never watch this. You will get no kind of enjoyment with this bullshit sequel whatsoever other than to vomit. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Basically It Stinks 2, I'm going to give Basically It Stinks 2 a 0 out of 10. Well, there we go. I finally reviewed one of the worst sequels ever. And I only decided to because like I was approaching my 1-year anniversary for when I reviewed the first Basic Instinct back in June 2021 last year. So, June this year, I decided to review the sequel. And wow, thank God I finally got through this mess, and hopefully I never have to revisit this borefest again. Like, I even almost forgot to mention, the flashbacks even give me a headache too. Like, this sequel's just boring as hell. And this film even killed Sharon Stone's career. But, until then guys, that'll be it for this rant. Thank you all for watching. And if you like this and want to see more, then don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.